SoTimi is a toolset for leveraging software that is based on a single source of truth. This demo demonstrates the power of clearly isolating the description of what needs to happen from the descriptions of how to go about making it happen, drawing a bright red line between the two. This is a description of what needs to happen. Notice that it does not say anything about how to create this app. It does not specify the language, platform, or anything else about how. It just describes an app that allows studios to manage teachers, students, and dances. That's it. Later, we might decide that we also want the students to be able to rate their dance teachers. This clear, simple description of what needs to happen is called a single source of truth, and it is specifically designed to be shared among many different technologies. Now to the question of how to do it. How would you implement this app? What languages would you use? What database? What API? Maybe you would focus on a not Microsoft backend. Maybe Linux, or Mac. Maybe all of the above. An important observation though is that across all of these different technologies, the description of what needs to happen has not changed. And when it does, typically some change will be needed across the entire tech stack. The more extensive the code base, the more expensive changes tend to be. And this tends to be true, even when most of the changes needed in each of those different technologies is completely patternistic and predictable. It's often mostly plumbing. Scaffolding. With SoTimi, things work a little bit differently. Having clearly described what needs to happen, the next step will be to choose a starter or template project, a seed. If you plant an apple seed, you get an apple tree, or in this case, an Xcode solution, Objective-C and Swift code for an iOS stack. If we plant a Microsoft seed, we get a Visual Studio solution, and C# code, an MVC REST API, and of course Ionic. Today we will be working with an Ionic seed project which includes a cross-platform mobile app which can be compiled for Android, iOS, Windows or web platform. The SoTimi website includes seeds for Ionic, Android, iOS, Rails, Python and more. After selecting our starter seed, we will fork it, rename it and then clone it locally. At this point, the only choice we've made is that it will be called Dance 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 as we intend to make an app for dance studios. The seed project includes a folder called SSOT, and the project description text file in there is where we will describe exactly what we want our app to do. It should allow dance studios to manage their teachers and students. Let's just leave it at that for now. Do not worry, we will come back in a few minutes and add more detail to this description. The SoTimi command line tool is used to initialize the seed. This process takes our single source of truth and creates the actual tech. This has now mixed a description of what is needed with a specific seed project, which only describes how the tech should work. Now that they've been combined, this seed has grown into a Dance Studio-shaped application, with back-end code, database scripts, a REST API and starter website. Notice that SoTimi identified the three things in our project description: studios, teachers and students, and has created API controllers for these. Let's include them and then run the project to see what we have at this point. In addition to the basic website, we find documentation on the REST API that was created for us. We will use a third-party tool called Postman to impersonate a browser and explore the API that was created for us. In addition to creating all of the scaffolding for the REST API, a Postman export file automatically includes requests to get, create, update and delete studios, teachers and students. Let's try getting a list of studios from the database. This causes the REST API to throw an exception when trying to connect to the database because we haven't created it yet. Luckily for us though, just like the Postman export, the seed has automatically produced a SQL script which will create the database if it does not yet exist. It also has code to create the tables for studios, teachers and students, and the app has code to create the tables for studios, teachers and students. Now when we allow the REST API to continue, it returns an empty list of studios because we haven't added any yet. Let's add one called New Studio 1. Calling Get Studios now returns the new studio. Okay, let's see the system through our starter app. This home page is where we will choose what the user sees when they first launch the app. Notice that we can get to studios, teachers and students on the menu, and looking at Studio shows us the new Studio 1 that we added through Postman. Clicking New Studio adds a new studio and lets us edit the name. So, we have the basic plumbing for our app, but it doesn't yet really work the way we want. We should, for example, be able to add teachers and students that are associated with each studio right here. Also, we may want to be able to do other things with our app as well. Let's see what happens when we update our single source of truth. For example, we might want to also allow studios to submit their best dances for inclusion at local or national dance competitions. Also, teachers and students really belong to specific studios, and teachers are associated with specific dances. In addition to the text file, the seed created a primary schema CSV file which lets us add additional details to the app's data model. Notice that it has created an ID dance data model. Notice that it has created an ID, name and description for studios, teachers, students and now dances and competitions as well. In addition to choosing exactly which entities and fields are included, we can indicate a simple hierarchy for our data model as well. Said another way, each studio has many teachers and students, and each teacher has many dances. At this point, competitions are not connected to anything else in the data model. Having tweaked the data model in a couple of specific technical ways, let's rebuild the project and see how the app works now. The seed automatically added 2 new REST API controllers for dances and competitions, and we just need to include them before rebuilding. We can now We can now verify that there are controllers for dances and competitions as expected. The Postman export was updated as well, and now includes requests for dances and competitions. Calling the API shows that the database is out of date, but the SQL script has automatically been updated too, so running it again brings the database back in line with the current schema. Now studios have associated teachers and students. Let's look at this structure through our starter app. Notice that the menu now only includes the top-level studios and competitions. Studios have associated students and teachers. Let's add Bob, Mary and one other student to move out loud. Also, let's add a teacher, Mrs. Francis, with one hip-hop dance. Having added some simple data to the database, let's back out and get a list of studios from the API, which should now include those new students and teachers under Move Out Loud. So, with 2 lines of English text as the source code, we have an app and backend support system, from scratch, completely under our control, which responds to any changes we make to our SSOT. Or single source of truth, i.e., the description of just what the app should do. And we have not had to write a single line of code by hand.